Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Myae San. In this presentation, we will discuss the effect of COVID-19 on economic inequality. In the introduction section, I will discuss on background, where I will talk about the definition of economic inequality, problem statement, where I will discuss the impact of COVID-19, and the organization of the remainder of the presentation, where I will touch on the agenda of the presentation. Economic inequality refers to the unequal distribution of income and opportunities among various groups in society. It is commonly referred to as the inequality among individuals and groups, but it can also refer to inequality between nations. It is a concern in almost every country, and most people are trapped in poverty with very little opportunities to climb up the social ladder. There are various causes of economic inequality, which are often interrelated, nonlinear, and complex. The labor market, innate ability, education, gender, and development patterns are all acknowledged factors that influence economic inequality in some way. Economic inequality is usually measured based on the distribution of income, which is the amount of money people are paid, and the distribution of wealth, which is the amount of wealth people own. The Gini coefficient is a widely used method for measuring economic inequality. It is suggested that greater inequality stifles economic growth and that economic inequality is highly linked to the political instability causing democratic breakdown, revolution, and civil conflict. The global coronavirus pandemic has further worsened economic inequalities in Malaysia as travel restrictions, nationwide lockdowns, and the virus itself has affected people within and across countries in a variety of ways. In the short term, this will cause significant disruption for citizens and labor market. The COVID-19 pandemic is expected to have a long-term economic and social impact on employment, income, and working conditions in labor markets all around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has worsened economic inequality in Malaysia due to several reasons, which include an increase in unemployment, reduction in access to credits, and etc. In this presentation, we will mainly look at the economic inequality in Malaysia, which resulted from an increase in unemployment due to COVID-19. The COVID-19 pandemic has had varying effects on each industry, ranging from severe damage for many to positive growth for a few. People from different economic sectors are impacted differently. The extent to which COVID-19 pandemic impact differs depending on the industry, which is linked to the employment in that industry. Unemployment is increasing in many industries. For instance, while the travel and tourism industry is highly affected by the COVID-19 due to the travel restrictions, the e-commerce industry was among the few sectors that were able to profit from the pandemic since it was utilized as an alternative to physical shopping. Hence, throughout this presentation, we will discuss unemployment due to COVID-19 in different sectors, which include tourism, airlines, and e-commerce, leading to economic inequality. We will be assessing which sector will be affected the most and how the employment in those industries changed before and after the pandemic to analyze which industry is more vulnerable during the pandemic using data and graphs. Throughout this presentation, there are four main contents to be discussed, which are literature review, theoretical background, analysis of data, and the result. Under the literature review, we will explain the overview of the previously published works on the topic of the effect of COVID-19 on economic inequality. The content of literature review refers to a full scholarly paper or a section of a scholarly work such as a book or an article to be cited. Explanations on the idea of other scholars for the chosen topic will also be provided. Next, theoretical background, or the background theories from the three chosen industries will be well explained. We will analyze how the industry works and what has affected them during the COVID-19 pandemic using data and graphs. Three chosen industries are explained in depth with credible data on the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on them. Lastly, the final part of this presentation will provide the results of the study. The results will be well explained based on the data from the previous analysis. We will also present an Islamic view and the conclusion at the end of our presentation.
My name is Nabihah and my metric number is 2012102. I will be presenting a literature review. Nashira and Sofyan 2020 observed that the equilibrium price given and the equilibrium amount supplied in the tourism business both fall when the demand function lowers with the emergence of COVID-19. This is due to a tight correlation between countries' COVID-19 exposure levels and its international tourism flows, both inbound and outbound. Farzan again, MR et al. 2021. To look at it another way, if a high number of tourists become infected with COVID-19, the tourism industry is more likely to close down to prevent the virus from spreading. Overall, the COVID-19 pandemic has damaged Malaysia's tourism economy, resulting in increasing unemployment and economic disparities. In addition, according to a study conducted by Sakacom and Suntichai 2020, there are 3 stages of declining airline stock due to COVID-19, and the airline industry's cumulative negative abnormal returns for the 5-day period following President Trump's announcement to ban travelers from 26 European countries are 24.42%. According to the conclusions of the study conducted by James P. et al. 2020, social estrangement, which requires airlines in the Asia-Pacific region to fly with a big percentage of empty seats, has an impact on their operation, independent of economic situations. During COVID-19, new laws had an impact on businesses and individuals. As a result, the aviation industry is a critical sector in an economy that requires a precise approach to raise stock prices and operations. Aside from that, the COVID-19 outbreak has boosted Malaysia's e-commerce industry, finished RS and McNaJ 2021. Lockdowns, logistics, tech-savvy end users, cashless users, the power of social media, and a national e-commerce strategy roadmap are listed as e-commerce growth components during the COVID-19 epidemic, according to them. Furthermore, according to a study concluded by Shahzad A. et al. 2020, organizational readiness, e-commerce expertise, and supply chain integration all have a significant favorable impact. As a result, the supply of e-commerce products has increased, which will aid in the reduction of Malaysia's economic disparity.
Next, I will continue with the theoretical background. COVID-19, which was declared as a global pandemic on 11 March 2020 by the World Health Organization, has led to unemployment in many industries and resulting in economic inequality. From the point of view of Matt Kibben and Fernando, impact of this COVID-19 on the economic is highly uncertain and difficult for governments and policymakers to construct a proper tool to measure its exact effect on economy and to formulate suitable strategy to tackle the economic consequences of the COVID-19. However, we can relate it to the theory of demand and supply to industry affected during COVID-19, which we will be focusing on these 3 industries: tourism industry, airline industry, and e-commerce industry. As for the tourism industry, the order for all business sectors to shut down and no visitors or residents are allowed to exit their homes during the order has shaken the tourism industry, as they are also not immune to the crisis. Adventure Travel Trade Association mentioned that companies throughout the tourism industry are struggling since the revenue declined rapidly, but the expenditure still need to be paid. But then, as people feel no need to go on vacation because of the movement control order, and unfortunately, this highly affected tourism industry, as when the demand for people to go to various destinations is lower, the supply will declining as they receive less revenue to accommodate expenditures of their business, and this lead to the industry to lay off workers and unfortunately increase unemployment, which then resulting in economic inequality throughout the nation. We can see also in airline industry, as the airline industry most of the time depend on the amount of passengers who use their service in order to generate revenue. When people do not travel, either domestic or international, the use of airline is decreasing. Therefore, they cannot generate much revenue to cater all the expenditures and have to lay off workers in order to stay in business. The World Tourism Organization estimated that the industry around the world would lose about 252 billion USD passengers revenue as a result of the current pandemic situation. In Malaysia, the low-cost carrier Air Asia is seeking a government loan as the industry suffers an offer pay cut and also lay off some of their workers. Further explanation will be shown at the analysis data part. As the two industries seem to experience decline in their economic activities, the e-commerce industry in Malaysia experienced a golden break as the industry is able to raise its revenue and contribute to the growth of GDP in Malaysia. High demand in this industry as more people use online platform services make the industry need to increase their supply. Therefore, more opportunities open for a lot of people such as riders for Grab or Foodpanda. It connects with the e-commerce industry as the increase in online purchase of daily essentials will increase demand for riders for delivery services. The situation will increase employment in this industry and as you can see, it results in economic inequality as it can be seen as founders in the e-commerce industry facing growth, especially in income, while certain industries are struggling and barely make a living throughout this pandemic.
Due to the restriction imposed to flatten the COVID-19 infection curve, people are unable to go out and work. As a result, businesses lose their income and were forced to lay off their workers, which then contributed to the increasing rate of unemployment. As the graph shows, the unemployment rate in 2020 surged to 4.5% from 3.26% in 2019. As more people lose their primary source of income, they ventured to other alternatives to make a living. This shift had caused economic inequality in terms of employment between industries. The first industry to be discussed is the tourism industry. Referring to the number of tourist arrival graph, Malaysia recorded a drastic fall from 26.1 million people to 4.33 million people, which equivalent to negative 83.4% annual change. This change is due to the travel ban imposed by Malaysia's government. And because of this situation, total employment in the tourism industry fell by 2.9% from 3.56 million people employed in 2019 to 3.45 million people employed in 2020, as can be seen in the employment in tourism industry graph. The second industry is the airline industry. This industry is closely related to the tourism industry, and when the travel ban was imposed, the airline industry pretty much had to shut down its operation. The graph above shows a revised forecast of Malaysia's passenger traffic made by Malaysia Aviation Commission (MAVCOM) in September 2020. They are forecasting a downward trend around 72.8% to 75.7% at most. This negative growth is equivalent to 26.6 million passengers to 29.7 million passengers. Even though there is no actual data to represent the employment in this industry as a whole in Malaysia, there were articles on how the airline companies are struggling, and one of them is the low-cost airline AirAsia. According to an article from Malay Mail published in June 2020, it is reported that 111 cabin crews, 172 pilots, and 50 engineers are expected to be laid off. And the last industry is the e-commerce industry. This industry is heavily dependent on the ICT industry. While other sectors suffers from the lockdown, e-commerce sectors, logistic or supply chain sector, and ICT sector have posted more employment opportunities. According to the data from Department of Statistics Malaysia, there is an increase of ICT's employment annual percentage change from 1.2% in 2019 to 2.0% in 2020. This is probably due to the movement control order imposed by the government that caused a change in consumer behavior from going to stores to placing orders online to fulfill their needs. According to the Internet User Survey publication by Malaysian Communication and Multimedia Commission (MCMC), shows that there is an increase of online banking and online shopping activities in 2020. This has opened up employment opportunities in various e-commerce chains, especially courier and delivery services. The pandemic also had the people start working and schooling remotely from their home, which consequently has opened up various job positions in the ICT industry. As for the results, economic inequality in terms of employment between industries can be seen from the annual percentage change of Malaysia's total employment graph. The graph shows that the employment in the e-commerce industry, which represented by the blue line, is growing. Meanwhile, the employment in the tourism industry is observed to fall sharply during the pandemic.
Next, I will continue on how Islamic view the effect of COVID-19 towards economic inequality. First is zakat. Zakat is a payment made annually under Islamic law on certain kinds of property and used for charitable and religious purposes. It is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. COVID-19 affects unemployment rate in general. More people being unemployed due to this pandemic. In this case, people are getting poorer and having no source of income to buy their necessities. In zakat, people with low income have to pay lower than the rich people. Thus, it helps to overcome the issue of the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Then, zakat will reduce economic inequality. The second point is sadaqah. Sadaqah is a charity given voluntarily in order to please God. Islam approach Muslim to give charity to others. They will be rewarded by the God in the hereafter. The fund collected will be contributed to the needy person. Next, it will reduce the economic inequality between the rich and the poor people. As a conclusion, we can see how COVID-19 affects the economic inequality today. From the early phase of COVID-19 spreading all over the world, it is obviously affects the unemployment rate worldwide. More people in certain industries being laid off due to this pandemic. Most of the industry laid off their workers due to some movement restriction by the government to prevent the spreading of COVID-19 viruses. The industries cannot fully utilize their resources, which will cause us a lot of resources wastage. Other than that, employees are unable to go to work due to the movement control order. Thus, this issue causes economic inequality. Before I end my group presentation, here are some steps that can reduce economic inequality. First, diminish various types of charges on the poor while increase charges on the rich individuals. Second, reduce sales tax which will enable the poor to buy everyday necessities. That's all from us. Thank you for your attention.